for FY 2019-20 called for additional investments in boosting the digital economy while also making digital transactions more attractive, thus reiterating its vision to develop the sector. India's digital consumer base is the world's second largest as well as the second fastest growing among 17 major economies as per findings of the India Economic Survey. And this base is core to the creation of future economic value and societal empowerment as digital solutions backed by new-gen technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things and automation become universal. It is no surprise that the growing digital economy in India is envisaged to reach a value of nearly $1 trillion by 2025, a five-fold increase from 2019. Right from multinationals to government entities to entrepreneurs of all sizes, digitalization is making Indian enterprises future-ready to take advantage of opportunities and overcome challenges. This is in line with the government's ambitious vision to make India a $5 trillion economy by 2025. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will take a closer look at the digital economy and what to expect for the sector in the budget. Joining me on the program today are Surojit Gupta, Senior Editor, Times of India, Bhanuchandar Nagarajan, former consultant, World Bank, and Jitin Jain, digital technology expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Bhanu, let me begin the program with you. Let's look at the digital economy journey thus far. The numbers have consistently risen over the years and it has grown many-fold. What has contributed to this?
Many things. Technological advancement itself creates more consumers. The recent McKinsey report said that by the end of 2020, we'll have at least 560 million internet subscribers. That is like a tremendous amount, like almost half the population will have a proper internet access. But coming to the digital economy per se, one thing we need to think about is whether government should be in the digital economy in the first place. If it decides to be in the digital economy, should it be just in the field of regulation, just tinkering with the law so that the sector improves? Or should it actually play a more proactive role in terms of allocating money for various sectors? In this, like, we have to understand what are the digital public goods in which the government should be there. For example, if you take like digital infrastructure, say like the Aadhaar or the broadband connections, or digital security, data privacy, or on some extended public goods, though they are technically not public goods, like education, health, agriculture. Are these things that the government should be in? If so, in what capacity is something that we should think about? So quite a lot of play here, but there are other important aspects that the government should keep in mind. For example, rural penetration, financial transactions through the digital economy that actually does away with lot of tax evasion, etc., etc. So there's a whole gamut of things that comes under digital economy. The government should like pick and choose where it actually wants to intervene. Sometimes like not intervening itself is a good thing. For example, if you take a combination of transactions that has happened through Uber Eats, Swiggy and Zomato, it has been 1.1 billion transactions in 2019. It is going to be 1.5 billion transactions in 2020. The government did not do anything, but the sector is flourishing. So the government really has to pick and choose where it wants to intervene and what kind of intervention, whether it has to be just regulatory or it has to be through some fiscal allocation to particular sectors.
Okay, all right. Jitin Jain, let me bring you to the picture now. So what is the scope as far as digital economy is concerned?
You see, we have been transitioning from a outsourcing economy in last decade to a innovating and sort of the innovation and data hub of the world. So gone are the days where we would only be seen as a country which does some outsourcing BPO work, making call center calls in Gurgaon and Noida. Now we are a country which is actually coming to a terms by not only doing the software outsourcing work, by creating innovative startups, and we have done a phenomenal work especially in artificial intelligence, facial recognition, and a sort of data analytics. So India is now becoming a sort of a data analytics leader in the world. Another thing what government is looking at is that we are looking towards the dawn of digital age, we are looking at the fourth industrial revolution, and government is trying to ensure that we don't miss that burst like in the last three revolutions we did. So one of the things is that we have realized that since data is the new oil in the world, we do not have to only trade in that commodity. We have to become actually the oil and a sort of a hub of that entire data center in the world. So one of the things what government is focusing is that digital economy should contribute at least up to $1 trillion in next 5 to 7 years, so that out of that 5 trillion economic dream what we have, digital economy has to contribute at least $1 trillion. Now, for that, there are multiple challenges. In last 6 years, government has been, putting up building blocks in place. Like you have had 10,000 crores corpus fund for the startups in place. You have had a policy where you're giving preferential treatment to Indian startups. You have had a policy where you've done away a lot of bureaucratic red tape, like for registering a startup now you can do it in 2-3 days. You can do away with your provident fund, a lot of fining and stuff, where you can just self sign and say that I'm a startup, let me just do it my way for 5 years. So the scrutiny and the compliance on part of government is little lenient towards the startup for the next in the initial first 5 to 7 years. Now, because you've given them a preferential treatment, you have given them ease of business, you have given them money. As Ravi Shankar Prasad said during the NIC conclave, that for the next 5 years, we are now going to focus on aspirations, so that this entire building blocks what we have put in place now could be used to transform the entire economy to a new transformation by serving the man who's standing on the last front, especially in the rural areas. You have connected all the village panchayats with National Knowledge Network. You have given them high-speed internet. You have got 60 crore mobile phone, smartphone users in India. You have given them, sort of online education, because everybody is able to, access digital tutorials. You are pushing sites like Flipkart, Amazon, Microsoft to, to do, sort of to get small traders online into the online e-commerce business. So idea is that only the middle class and the urban class should not reap the benefits of digital transformation. The actual transformation has to come by increasing the user base, like the Jan Dhan users who could use the digital banking, the village traders who could use, sell their online stuff. And in that entire thing, government has given a huge push, and I think they'll be able to achieve that $1 trillion thing if they do it well. But there are two challenges. One, the moment you talk about creating India a hub of data centers in the world, the moment you talk about $1 trillion digital economy, where is the digital security? You see, we have done many shows on this channel itself, where we have realized that because we have taken a gigantic push toward digitalization, we have somehow not been able to focus or devote equivalent time on the digital hygiene of citizen, digital security, and as a result, the number of complaints which are reported for financial crimes in India, 90 to 95% of them are clogged by the OTP frauds. Small frauds of 5,000 money being stolen from your digital wallets, payments, credit cards being misused. So I think government has to be very, very careful that we should not end up clogging this financial crime cycle. We should not end up creating a trust deficit for the digital platforms. We have to ensure that the person who does a transaction once online, like we pointed out, he continues to do that. Right. It should not happen that he does 5 transactions, he faces a fraud, and then he just pushes back and tells his family, no, sorry, leave the digital platform. So I think the focus has to be on AI-driven innovations for startups, give them monies and everything, focus on digital security, and last, make sure that government should not get into the business of doing business on digital platforms. Like somebody said that, government might open GEM platform to all users in the world so that we can compete with Flipkart and Amazon. I think we should not do that. We have got horrendous examples like Air India and, all these things in our plate. Government should only be in the business of regulating digital business.
Right.
Let's regulate those platforms, decide economic policies, taxation policies, service policies, but so government should, I think it's a very, critical time for this transition. We should not get carried away by a lot of, greener grass we see on other sides. We have to focus more on the building blocks.
Okay, all right. So, Suraj Gupta, let me bring you to the picture now. So, what are the areas or the sectors that have been contributing largely to the digital economy, and how do we overcome some of these challenges and these dangers that Jitin Jain has posed?
See, financial sector is one where we have seen a huge explosion, whether it's Jan Dhan accounts or India Post banks. We can build on that block. Then you have agri-tech these days. You can do wonders. There's one sector which is waiting to be, waiting to basically get the impact of this whole digital revolution is MSMEs in their bill discounting, in their payments. And that will also help in plugging a lot of these loopholes in GST. But as Mr. Jain talked about, the most important factor is safety, privacy. And if a user is not feeling safe enough, he won't use it enough. So the government has to ensure that the infrastructure is safe, invest in the latest technology that has been there, and promote innovation, And in terms of, as far as regulation is concerned, I don't think the government also should not burden the sector with over-regulation. It should be a light regulation. Let innovation prosper, and that is how the sector will flourish.
Okay, all right. Taking the discussion forward now, let's not forget that we have a huge online marketplace as well, Banu, and that has contributed immensely to the digital economy. But on the other side of the spectrum, it has also, put the brick and mortar stores under a lot of pressure. So how do we deal with that kind of a dual problem?
Yeah, so all technology causes some kind of disruption, right? And this is a natural evolution of the platform or the way in which things is done, especially e-commerce. Slowly, I think people will adopt to it. Even traders will actually sort of put their goods on e-marketplaces, and that will create demand for technicians. The market has a way of sorting these things out. Continuing on what I was saying, it's quite all well to talk about where the government can intervene and not intervene, but digital being sort of a borderless thing, we might have to look at, we might have to throw the rule book away in certain areas, because see, take the competition from China. Okay, China has set up a $29 billion fund, state-sponsored fund for semiconductor innovation. Okay. The Chinese government and the Chinese venture capital funds, there is absolutely no real difference. Like they have the party secretary in all of these funds, and these funds invest in Indian companies. Okay, so like we might have to be mindful of these things. If, for example, the government can actually say decide to give incentives to a particular sector. I mean, in a free market theory, we might think that that's not particularly necessary, but it becomes necessary from a geostrategic perspective. Okay, for example, take the case of call centers or data protection, and so on and so forth. So there are certain areas in which the government can proactively intervene, not because it makes economic sense, but it makes strategic sense. Coming to the next point, the real focus, I think, on the digital economy, and I think that's where we will reap a lot of dividends in the coming decade, is where in the tier 2 and the tier 3 parts of our economy, tier 2, 3 cities and villages and so on. So, for example, take education and health. Okay, the government has started Swayam. Okay, the India's largest MOOCs, which is around 2 crore subscribers. Now, number of people taking exams is less, but 2 crore subscribers. In school education, there is Operation Digital Board. In case of health, okay, one of the underrated features of Ayushman Bharat, we keep talking about the insurance, but it's the health and wellness centers. There are 3 lakh health and wellness centers that were planned, which has telemedicine facilities. Okay, so all of these will actually improve the human capital. They'll be like productive members of the society, and like we started speaking about the marketplaces, right? These marketplaces connect our young people sitting in remote part of, say, Jharkhand or Odisha to anywhere in the world. Okay, so the opportunities and the productivity is going to rise so much. How the government facilitates is actually kind of a very tricky thing, where to invest, what not invest, where to have a light touch, where to have a push, and so on. So that's more art than science. Let's see, I think the government will also learn to regulate as the sector grows. Okay, all right. So all of this, you gave the example of marketplaces and how someone in Jharkhand be connected to the world. There has been some controversies related to that as well, about how all of this can be misused.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that problem, and also this issue of perception that you spoke about, Jitin Jain, of once you get cheated, how a person probably does not want to go back to digital mode of transaction and go into that. So do we have the technology to deal and address these kind of issues?
You see, government is dealing with problems on multiple fronts. It's not that government has just has no clue of the new technology. They are watching. They're slow, but they're taking very thoughtful steps. For example, any new technology will be when it brings disruption, it also creates some sort of distraction also. So people said that if Flipkart and Amazon do all the business, what will happen to the small shops? You see, when Uber and Ola came in, the first people who protested was the taxi owners and taxi drivers. The moment they realized that they were making more money than they could make in their own business, they realized that Uber and Ola were really good for them too, and they have survived really well. Now same thing will happen with all the small shop owners also, because they will get more customers, they will get more, increased user base, revenue base. So I think all this, things will get sorted out automatically with times to come. But look at government, the moment they realize that there are, because it is a borderless trade, if you buy something from Flipkart or Amazon today, you may or may not get a GST invoice based on your trader account or a business account. But if you buy something from Alibaba and from China here and there, they are selling you stuff without a GST invoice. Now government is taking action so that that compliance come in place automatically, that if you're sending anything to India, you have to comply within the Indian tax regimes. So they're doing something. Second, one of the threats with these people was that they will sell your stuff on Flipkart or Amazon or these platforms. When they realize that this is the stuff which is selling most, they will replace that stuff with their own brand and sort of monopolize the market. So recently, I think a couple of months back, government came with a direction that no e-commerce vendor will be able to sell their own products with their own brand. That was to protect the smaller brands from being taken over and rebranded. You see, government is doing regulating well. They are slow, but they're doing really well. Third, you see, now what has happened, as you rightly pointed out, that China has more budget to invest on AI for the next 5 years than the 5 GDPs of the largest growing countries in the world. I think, if you calculate US and Europe, they have more. China has more fund than all of them collectively. So one of the things India has to do is that we are a country where for 70 years we have not produced any structured data. We are a data repository of the world which has never been utilized. So in last 5 years, one of the things government has been focusing is on the open data. So today you have a lot of open data streams, like how many cars pile through the toll tax, how many trains come on time, they go late. All these things are made available on gov.in, so that you could utilize that data and create a lot of over-the-top products. You can create your own GST applications. So one of the focus government has to do is that they have to ensure that a lot of sectors, they have to pool in their resources. Ministries do not have to work in isolation. They have to pool in data, create a structured data bank where, like, I will give you an example. 80% of Indian startups which are doing beautiful works on artificial intelligence, they have trained their AI algorithms on the Western data, which brings in biasness, which brings in dependencies, which brings in like loss of revenue. So if we can train our technologies on Indian data sets, trust me, it will create so much of innovation, and especially in the defense exports where, we've been focusing that AI should only work in predictive policing or defense technologies. Time has to come when AI has to focus on the precision farming, where data analytics has to focus less on what insurance banks have to sell to me than what corporate insurance bank could sell to the farmers. So that transition for our economy can only happen when we structure our own data, when we structure our own policies. And I think government is a little slow on it, but they're doing it well. So and one of the things, there are some roadblocks in the policies. For example, you brought in the GST reform, you brought in the startup reforms. Because you gave preferential treatment to startups, they started supplying products to the government. Now, but what is happening today, the moment you increase a 100 rupee invoice to the government, you have to pay 18% GST right away. And the payment does not come for 1 year. Earlier, the moment you get money, then your income will become taxable. So I think these are little policy roadblocks which has to be removed in this budget, because you can't have a highway with 5 speed breakers. You have to decide whether you want to build a 40 colony road or a highway. If it is a highway, make sure there are no speed breakers.
If I may add, Frank, for example, it has huge benefits. If we have seen for the government as well, use of DBT, the cost savings for the government. So it makes sense for the government as well to expand this whole net. And like Mr. Jain was talking about, develop policies which really, foster innovation. And don't stifle roadblocks like this. You have a policy A, but policy B will block your. So you have to be very clear on this.
At some level, do you also believe that we need to build awareness and also spread the word and make people know and let them know what it is and what it is that they may be getting into and what it is that they're going to get in return?
Yeah, so that is very critical part of it. Like, for example, financial literacy, is something which we talk about, but it's generally mainly a big city phenomena. It has to start from schools. How you can use your mobile, how you can use your laptop, computers. He talked about tier 2, tier 3 cities. The explosion is going to happen there. And there again, the question of security will come in, because more and more young people will be using these applications. More and more people who are perhaps not that educated will be using this for banking or for, say, farming. So you need to bring in, safety networks and awareness. As you said, it's absolutely critical part of the program.
Okay, now let's get into this section where we talk about the expectations really from the budget. Bana, what are your expectations as far as the digital economy is concerned?
In terms of digital economy, quite a bit of what we spoke before, where to invest, where to not invest, focusing specifically on digital public goods. For example, more pervasive use of Aadhaar, more allocation to education and e-health and e-education, so on. Security, data security, data privacy, and general cyber security, and so on. So I don't know whether we'll get the line items for these, but coming to a bigger picture on the same topic that you mentioned, I will be very curious to look at if there are allocations or if there are provisions for human capital development in this field, okay, at multiple levels. Okay, one is what Mr. Dasgupta just spoke about, on training people in tier 2, tier 3 cities for the digital economy, okay, to use services, okay. That is one. Second thing is, are we going to focus on high-end research, okay, really high-end research that is going to give us cutting edge, like this involves investment in labs, in universities and so on. Third is, how much are we training our government servants, and how much are we going to focus on skill development within the government to enable, say, an Estonia-like structure where most of the public goods provision is through the internet. Okay, so all of this, I will be curious if there is a huge human resource component to the whole thing.
Okay, Jitin Jain, what's your budget wish list for the sector?
You see, one of the bills which came in the last session was the data privacy bill. And one of the key focus of that bill is that because we want to make India as a data innovation and data center hub of the world, we have to ensure that we have a very graded mechanism and a very strong data security policy in place. And for that, government said that one, that if there is a critical financial or personal data about Indian customers, that data has to reside within India. That means that it would increase the cost of infrastructure for the startups and other companies. And it is rightly so, it should be done in the national interest. Number two, they said that if data you have collected about the Indian citizens is stolen or is being sold by you, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, unconsciously, by fraud or by choice, come what may, you will be penalized by 5% amount of your turnover. Mind you, not profit, but turnover of the entire year. If the data which is lost or sold or stolen by hackers also has the data of minors, underage children, below 18, then the quantum of penalty would be 10%. So you're looking at which is capped up to 5 crores. So you are looking at a very stringent data security regime. So what will happen the moment this bill is bought? The company, startups, and across all sectors will be forced to invest into cyber security and the data localization. I think, and there is a resistance which is coming from our own industry bodies like NASSCOM and DSCI, where they are, lobbying sort of, playing the voice tune of the foreign companies like Microsoft and Google that data localization should not take place. This will increase the cost. So I think, government might do a balancing act in this budget. They may say that, look, in the national interest, which is supreme, we will ensure that data localization happens even if it increases the cost. We will ensure that penalties are imposed so that we don't have to follow European models. We have to have an Indian model. We have a very robust security economy in India. But if whatever amount you invest in the cyber security of your company or the digital infrastructure of your company, you might have some tax incentives. Like you have had PF-based incentives for individuals. So government might give some relief to the companies to rationalize the thoughts. Second, my expectation as a normal, a citizen digital entrepreneur would be that you showed us a promise as a dream of one nation, one tax. I think there are multiple layers of tax. That has to be, there has to be a commitment that in 3 years, 4 years, we will not only make India one nation, one tax economy, but also a one return economy. That we don't have to file returns every month. This is the biggest harassment. And that is the reason you see the number of startups which open in India, number of startups which take funding from government and investors in India, they do really well. And out of the ones which are successful, how many of them are then shifting outside to Singapore or US? That is a challenge for us. That now, since we have been able to, attract talent over here, make them open instead of, going to US, stay here and open their startups, we also have to ensure that they stay. Yeah. They don't go away after, taking all the investments. So I think that rationalization of taxes and some sort of tax incentives have to happen in this budget.
Okay, all right. And Surajit, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on what you expect to see from the
Well,
budget.
I would like to see more some incentives for innovation in the sector, as well as promoting digital economy. Maybe something which benefits the consumer. So I would like to see incentives in those sectors.
Okay, all right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. We heard it from the experts as to what their budget expectations